Welcome to another edition of Hey Bobby, and we can say a playoff edition of Hey Bobby. A senior VP with the Cleveland Guardians, Bob DiBiasio, has spent time with us the entire season, really talking Guardians baseball and baseball in general. Bobby, before we get into playoffs, and there's a lot to talk about there, if you don't mind, we lost one of the greats the other day, passing away at the age of 83 in Pete Rose. And certainly with Pete Rose comes a gigantic question mark and uncertainties about him. But personally, how did you look at Pete Rose in baseball history?
Well, obviously, such a complex, controversial player when it comes to looking at his career. There's no question the man who had a bat in his hands was a wizard, who was absolutely Ty Cobb and Tony Gwynn and Pete Rose, and you name the guys, Rod Carew, who could just put the bat on the ball with such amazing, remarkable consistency. Um, but the game of baseball is all about some other things as well. Um, so I really never knew how to react because I always vacillated in my opinion of whether or not he should be a Hall of Famer or not. And one day I asked Herb Score, I said, help me with this. I'm doing speaking appearances and the question comes up and I hem and haw and I really haven't settled in on an answer. Can you help me? He goes, well, the hardest part about Pete is when we all came into the game of baseball, there were actually only two rules. One is never touch an umpire, and the other is never bet on baseball. And Pete was 0 for 2.
Mm.
And that was his statement. So it ended up, okay. Um, I understand where he's coming from. Now, take it from the next. When people say, it's a shame that baseball, doesn't honor him in Cooperstown, that Pete Rose isn't in the Hall of Fame. Well, people need to understand that it's the National Baseball Hall of Fame and museum. Pete Rose is all over the museum. There is no scenario in which Pete Rose is ignored as one of the greatest hitters. I mean, he's probably on every floor somewhere, certainly up in the offensive category section that they have position players and hits and such, and he and Ty Cobb and the rest of them. So he's certainly honored in the museum part. He's not forgotten, not, certainly not ignored for his efforts with a bat in his hand. But it's sad, I'm a fan of Vegas, and my wife and I like going there, and he lived there, and so he would always be either at his restaurant or at card shows. I didn't know him real well, but I knew enough to say hello. So tried to find him and at least say hello.
And he was just in Cleveland, I think, a couple of months ago.
Well, the National Card Collector Show,
Yeah,
yes.
for the card collectors show. You know what's also interesting, and I'll get off Pete here for a second. It makes it difficult too when a lot of people, and Bobby and I will always debate this sometimes with a bunch of text messages and stuff, who's your all-time favorite third baseman, or who's your all-time favorite catcher, and this type of thing. Pete was an all-star in 4 different positions. So a
Right.
lot of times when you talk about position players, you don't think about Pete Rose because he played second, he played first, he played third, and he played left field for the Cincinnati Reds. So a lot of times when people are putting together their all-time greats at positions, there was really nowhere to put him because you'll think about other players at different positions.
Correct. And all I can say lastly on Pete is I was a dear, dear, dear friend of Ray Fosse's. And so that seeps into my
Yeah.
mind and heart when it comes to Pete in the Hall of Fame. So I may not be the most open-minded when it comes, which actually was one of the reasons why I asked Herbie his thoughts. So, because all those years he told Ray he wasn't headhunting, and then he wrote a book, and in the book he said he was,
Yeah.
and that really made Ray angry.
Hmm.
And um, but um, a remarkable, hardworking, amazing talent with a bat in his hands.
He had a style certainly that you wanted your kids to emulate as far as playing baseball. We have that guy now with a segue to our Cleveland
Yeah,
Guardians. I
Jose.
often,
Yeah.
yeah, I tell my kids that, Bobby. I said, this is the guy. If you're a baseball player, you want to watch him play. Switch hits, power, runs the bases, smart on the bases, plays defense, and maybe the most important thing, right, Bobby? And I'll let you expand here. He's a leader of this.
Well, he's absolutely a leader. He wants to be a leader, which is so very important. Um, Sometimes just because you're a good athlete and have been in a place um, for a period of time, that moniker is placed on you, and you're just not built for it. Some people just want to focus on, let me be the best I can be, and that's a good enough leadership role by my work ethic, etc. Where Hosey, just from the way he walks around that clubhouse, with that swagger and his humor, and just the way he gets people fired up, and then obviously the way he plays the game. We were so bummed that Sunday's game was rained out because he's one homer away from a 40-40 season. He's a couple doubles from 40 homers, 40 doubles, 40 steals, 100 ribbies. I mean, just one of the best all-around seasons in our franchise's 124-year history. And so he just didn't get those four at bats. So we were all kidding. And I guess there were a few people that what I heard was Stephen Vogt's couple of the coaches were like, "Are you gonna bat Hosey leadoff today? So maybe he can get an extra at bat." And he's like, "Oh no, we're sticking, we're sticking with our routine. We got bigger fish to fry in one sense, and let's hope he gets 4 or 5 at bats to get the job done." He almost had one Saturday night. The
Yeah,
wind was just kicking up Saturday. And I think he thought he had it too when he hit it.
I agree.
But what a remarkable man. His commitment to this franchise. And I think that was part of it, that he knew this was his team.
Yeah,
And
his team is leadership, style, and like you said, around the clubhouse. Another guy who really leads too, and he leads it maybe a little bit different way, and that's his emotions, is Josh Naylor, who's put together a heck of a baseball season for us.
he's an emotional leader. There's no question. He's high energy every minute of the day when he's on that baseball field. And yeah, the two of them, they were the first tandem in all of baseball this year to both have 100 RBIs in the middle of the order. 3, 4 hitters. They hit the 100 RBI mark before any other combo did it in baseball, and obviously so vitally important to our success offensively.
When you look at Bobby, playoff baseball, it's a little bit different, right? The ante gets up a little bit more of the chess matches. I'm looking forward to Stephen Vogt with playoff baseball and certainly how he handles that and such. What do you circle with this particular baseball team as the biggest keys in the playoff run, and how far we'll go with this baseball team?
Well, if we can get a lead early in a game, get a 1-2 run lead, which allows our bullpen to do its thing, then that's the recipe for success for us. So that's what I look at. It's going to be very interesting to see what page out of Tito's playbook Stephen Vogt takes. The way he would pitch Andrew Miller in the 5th or 6th inning with 2 guys on and 1 out, and you need to cut off a rally or just not let them score in the middle innings. So we had the luxury with Cody Allen at the back end of the bullpen to be able to use a high leverage guy like Andrew Miller. Now we've got a number of those guys. They're all rookies, so I think there's this tendency that you want to use them where they're most comfortable and where they've been used to performing. But I think everybody knows all hands on deck, and whenever needed, take the ball and go do it. But our strength in this year's team is our bullpen. Let's hope we get in a scenario where that plays a vital role in us getting wins.
American League playoffs really interesting this year, right? I mean, you got the Yankees, and they've been there a lot, and certainly Houston has been there a lot. But then the other teams, Baltimore up and coming with a lot of young talent, and then three teams from the American League Central. When you look at us, a great surprise. Kansas City, great surprise, and Detroit, a great surprise. All three in the playoffs. That's a good story.
Well, it really is. If you go back to 95 when three divisional format had its first postseason, as you know, 94 didn't happen when the divisions were created. Yankees have been in 25 postseasons, the Braves 20, Dodgers 18, St. Louis 17, and then it's us, Houston, and Boston at 14. So we've been there pretty regularly, 7 times in the last 12 years. So this franchise is used to preparing for October, especially of late, the last 12 seasons. So you've got the way the Tigers and the Royals, especially the Tigers, ended up flipping their season, like the Mets. The Mets started 11 games under 500 after 60 games or somewhere in there, and they turned it around with the incredible games the other day, especially game one. But people who thought our division was a cakewalk now realize, 3 teams in the postseason out of 5, that's pretty darn good.
And 4 teams with a 500 record or better in the division, which is pretty darn good. Well, Bobby, let's enjoy the playoff baseball this coming weekend. We'll do this again next week. It's time to push the chips to the center, and here we go, playoff baseball. Thanks for joining us again.
Thank you, Ray. Always a treat. Go Guardians.